Welcome back to Punches and Bunches, the official podcast of the South Texas Amateur Boxing Association. My guest on the program today is Nexis Novoa. Nexis is a judge at both the amateur and professional level, and she's also STABA's 2024 Boxing Judge of the Year. Nexis, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me. That was quite the introduction.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. And you deserve that introduction. So let's start with the basic question. How did you become interested in boxing?
Oh, that started from childhood. Um, Big Mexican family, you know how it is. Everybody gets together, orders the pay-per-view. And I just remember as a kid, I wanted everybody to just be quiet so I could hear what the commentators were saying and whatnot. And, everybody's not paying attention to the undercards, but I wanted to see everything. And I was really into wrestling. I think just all combative sports. These men and women, they're modern day gladiators. So, like, what could be more entertaining than that? And it's just as a child, I always wanted to know what was going on. Why were they doing this? I would put the closed caption on and just read the subtitles because everybody was too loud. So I knew I was in love with it as a kid.
So you're a fan all through your childhood. Then at what point do you say, okay, I'm tired of being a fan. I'm ready to jump in the game of being a boxing official? When does that happen?
I'm a very curious person by nature. So I was, okay, I'm going to show my age here. But, at the time, we didn't have the internet, the Googles and YouTubes and everything. So when I was doing research, I had to go rent VHSs from the library and watch everything over and over. And I'm writing down questions and I'm wondering why is this happening? But I didn't really know anybody that had the answers. And as I got older and, the internet was more accessible, you can read rule books online and procedures. And at a certain point, it was like, hey, I think I know more than the average person. How do I get involved? How can I be where the action's at? And all roads led to me finding out about the USA boxing program. And I had a phone call with our president, Eddie Garcia, on a Monday. He said, hey, you think you could credential and be ready by Friday? We have a show. That's where you and I met. And the rest has been history after that. There's no looking back. I'll never leave.
Absolutely, and I think I'm right there with you. Let me ask you this, because you're one of the best judges in our system. When I look at your scores when we work at events together, and I'm the OIC, you're basically always in the high 90s of being in the majority. Of course, I mentioned you were Judge of the Year last year. What are you looking for when you're judging a fight? And maybe for some of our fighters that are watching this, maybe they'll find that useful. You, as one of our better judges, what is it that you're looking for, particularly at the USA boxing level?
First thing we're looking for is the quality of the punches, the number and the quality. And we're staring at it. We're making sure it's not a slap, it's a punch. Sometimes it's dead even. So the next thing we're looking for ring generalship, who's controlling it, who's making this their fight, which fighters controlling the ring, more accurate. It's there's so much, detail in it. It all just kind of works together once you get there.
It's scary in some ways because say nothing happens in a round, but maybe one guy has is clinching his opponent and he's hitting him with like a bunch of like shots in the kidney and you're not scoring them, but then nothing else happened and you're like, oh, like what if the other judges scored that and I'm in the minority here? It's a little scary being a judge, isn't it?
Right. Oh yeah, it is. And then at that point, it's because we have had fights like that where nothing's happening. Well, like we said, this is a combat sport. If even though those are not good punches, you're the only one trying to make it combative. I got to go that way. And I know some judges don't see it that way. It is subjective, but there is criteria, there's training that we take and we follow that as best we can, but sometimes we just have to go off of what's happening in front of us. So it is scary.
It's scary, especially when you hear that it's a 2-1 decision. Sometimes I think we as the judges are more scared than the fighters that we're going to be on the opposite end of that.
The scariest words in the English language are split decision. I hate them. I hate them so much. We don't want to hear it. It's scary. It's we understand what the athletes in front of us have sacrificed to be able just to get into that ring. So the pressure's on for them to put on a good show, for them to, keep their record up. And we understand that. And we want to give them the best officiating possible. So it's nerves all around for sure.
And I don't think a lot of the fighters understand that we as judges, especially, people that really care about the sport, we hate hearing split decision more than anybody.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
perfectionists ourselves. We care about the careers of these boxers because the ref manages the safety of the boxers, and of course the judge manages the not manages but helps the career of the boxers by accurately calling, who actually won that fight. And I would say about 97% of the time you're getting that right. I'm a little lower. I'm probably at about 94%. Let me ask you this, because this is so important for us as judges to stay focused. Do you have methods? Do you have strategies for staying focused and locked in during a fight?
I do. It starts the night before, getting a good night's sleep. The day of a fight, I will let everybody know, hey, I'm working today. They know not to text me, call me. I don't want to be thinking about anything else except what's going on in front of me. Like I said, back to how much we care about the fighters and everything that they've put in just to get in there. I owe them my focus for sure. And it's easy to kind of lock in once you respect and understand what they're trying to do. So,
It's
but
hard
yeah, good
sometimes.
night's sleep.
We're buddies with a lot of the other officials. Some of these fights are in random cities that are fun to visit, but at the end of the day, we're not here to chat. We're not here to visit Karn City or Beeville or whatever city we're in. We're here to,
Yeah.
make sure we accurately score the fight.
Yeah. And it does take a lot out of you. I mean, we've all, like you said, we're all buddies. And sometimes we're like, hey, well, let's all get together after this show and hang out. And we're like, hey, we're tired. We just exhausted all of our brain power. We got the refs in there working and, 30 bouts later, we're like, see you in the morning, go to sleep.
Absolutely. One thing I noticed lately is that every time, especially at the USA boxing level, every time we're at a show now, there's always one or two new officials. And statistically, maybe a year from now, we'll probably only see about 15 to 20% of them that stick around, work the system. What would be your advice to, new judges, new referees getting in the game? What would be some words of wisdom you'd have for them?
That's a good question. If you are interested in the sport, I recommend joining because I thought I knew a lot. Turns out I didn't know anything. Well, I did, but there's so much more to learn. If you are interested in the sport, you really want your boxing IQ to go up, you join. There's so much more to learn. We've been doing this for years. I can tell you right now, there's not an event I do where I don't learn something new every single time. And we're all here. We don't get paid. We're here because we love the sport. And it's important to know that you're not just going to come in and be the next great thing on TV. It's a lot of work and sacrifice. So make sure you love it. And like I said, we're putting their safety, we're putting everything that we have into it because we know what they're doing. So I mean, yeah, we do see a lot of officials come and go because it's not what they expected. Um, Crazy to me. I could never let it go. But I would say just be ready to put in work, be ready to learn. Um, you're going to meet a lot of great people that can teach you, learn, ask questions, and just make sure your heart's in the right place. We're not here to get paid. We don't get paid. Just make sure coming in, it's because you love this sport and you ultimately want to leave it better than you found it.
I think it's so important what you said. I mean, it's so true that just because you start, in the amateurs, I can tell you from experience, you're not going to be in Vegas 2, 3 weeks from now. It's going to be a process where you have to love the sport. You have to want to get better in the sport. You have to be in it for the right reasons. Because if you're not, usually you get weeded out or you'll give up on it yourself because, you saw yourself judging ringside in Vegas 2 weeks after you started.
Yeah,
And that's just not realistic, you
that's
know?
that's right.
That's right.
Mm.
So I agree. Couldn't agree more with what you said there. Looking back at some moments in your career, I know you're fairly young in your career, even though you were the judge of the year last year. even though you have done some great things. I know you're still young in your career, but what are some memories that stick out to you in boxing? It could be as a fan, it could be as an official. What are just some great memories you've developed over the years?
Oh, dude, there's so many. To meeting all of you guys, it really does feel like having 100 brothers and sisters all over the country, just meeting everybody, seeing how different LBCs run their chapters and winning Judge of the Year. That was incredible. You surprised me with that one. I want to say something that did stand out was in January, we had an officials banquet. Shout out to the board for throwing that. Like we mentioned earlier, we are exhausted after the events. We spent all day there, weigh-ins, cleaning up afterwards. There's a lot of things that people don't see, but it was really, really nice to be able to all get together and dress up and not work, seeing everybody, tuxedos and ball gowns, cocktails, dinner, and dancing. We had two of the top officials out there right now. We have Tom Taylor and Mark Kalloy give amazing speeches about what the program meant to them. And it was a really good night to be able to see everybody outside of work. And I think we should be bonded. We should have closeness together because y'all are the family I choose when I'm away from my family. So
And
I think events like that are important.
we learned a lot that night, like you said, and we got to see our president Eddie Garcia dressed like a mobster. So it I think all around it was a good experience. So let's close out with this one. As a judge, a boxing judge, people don't even know who that person at ringside is until something goes wrong, and usually that's a bad decision. So until they're ready to holler and boo, they don't the crowd doesn't even typically notice a judge. So in terms of wanting to stay on the right side of not having everybody mad at us. How important is it for a judge to consistently practice, watch tape, sign up for amateur events every week? Just how important is it to stay sharp, stay focused, and doing the film study? How important is that for a boxing judge?
For me, film study is my biggest weapon. That's yeah, every week, like clockwork. You dedicate a few hours, pay attention. The USA Boxing website has a great tool where we can watch fights that were controversial and in the reffing or the judging, score them and write down questions. Anything you have, we all can group chat each other at any time. And we do. We do a pretty good job of messaging each other. Hey, what'd you think of this? What'd you see? And I think that helps keep us the sharpest. It's my favorite thing to do. Like I said, y'all don't have to go to the library and rent a bunch of embarrassing VHSs. We just pop on YouTube or click the website and everything's right there at our fingertips. There's no reason we shouldn't be staying sharp. I hate the month of December when we have to go like 2 months without events. I miss being ringside. That's the best way to stay sharp.
And you have to give credit, extra credit, to my friend Nexis here, who is fighting through the flu to be on the podcast today. We actually scored a fight the other day, Ennis versus Stanionis, the pro fight on Saturday.
Yeah,
She
we
had
did.
it 60 to 53. I had it 59 to 54. The rest of the world, according to BoxRec, agreed with her, 60 to 53. So I got to take the L on that one. So thank you to today's guest, Nexis Novoa, a judge at all levels of combative sports, and the 2024 South Texas Amateur Boxing Association Judge of the Year. Nexus, thank you so much for joining the program today.
I appreciate you, brother.